Today we welcome to Kiamidis Manihani Mr. Toby Birch, who has been an investment manager for 35 years and is based in Guernsey. While working for a Swiss prominent bank, he wrote a book called The Final Crash, which forecast the 2008 credit crisis. Although he manages conventional pension funds, he has a background in alternative investments and is chairman of Golden Prospect Precious Metals. He's a controversial, unconventional, and critical thinker. His latest award came from Spears Wealth magazine, being featured in their 2025 Wealth Manager Index of recommended high net worth advisors. Important points to notice include: ideology always drives policy, financial implications, path to tyranny. The presentation is for information only and does not constitute invitation to invest. Καλωσορίζουμε σήμερα στο Kiamidis Manihani τον Toby Birch, σύμβουλο επενδύσεων για 35 χρόνια με έδρα τον Guernsey. Ενώ εργαζόταν σε μια μεγάλη ελβετική τράπεζα, έγραψε το βιβλίο The Final Crash και εξηγούσε γιατί θα γίνει όπως και έγινε το 2008. Η ικανότητα του να έχει κριτική σκέψη τον καταστούν ειδικών για όλους τους τομείς επενδύσεων. Είναι πρόεδρος του Golden Prospects Precious Metals και για το 2025 το Spears Wealth Magazine τον συστήνει σαν σύμβουλο των πολύ πλουσίων. Μερικά από τα σημαντικά θέματα που θα συζητηθούν είναι: πώς η ιδεολογία καθορίζει την πολιτική, τι σημαίνει για τις οικονομίες, μονοπάτι προς τυραννία. Η παρουσίαση είναι μόνο για πληροφόρηση και δεν αποτελεί πρόσκληση για επένδυση.
Γεια σας. Today I would like to welcome for a discussion on financial matters a famous expert, the expert of experts, Toby Birch from Guernsey, who has had experience in all types of investments, stocks, shares, gold, minerals, currencies, and has been proven right time and time again, even when he predicts the bad things to happen. In 2007, he wrote the book The Final Crash, predicting the financial crash of 2008. And today we are going to experience his wisdom, and I would like to, because it is so important what will be said, I would like to stress from the beginning that this discussion is for information only and it is not designed to attract investment business. Toby, welcome to Kiamidis Manihani, whose effort is to educate people around the world on financial matters. I know the name Cassandra has been used from the Greek mythology, who predicted things, but because they were not so nice, nobody believed her. You are now saying a few things to me that I have read the book back in 2007. It makes a lot of sense because I see that nothing much has changed. We have worsened the situation in the financial world. And I can see that something is going to happen. Something nasty is going to happen because the ideology that leads to policies is such that it sticks out by a mile. Mm-hmm. Please, give us your wisdom yet again.
Thank you. I often turn to ancient wisdom. Of course, Greek mythology is the best source for this. And you mentioned Cassandra there because she was given a gift by Apollo to see the future, but because she spurned his advances, he actually then cursed her, so no one would believe her. So I feel great sympathy for poor Cassandra, because going back to when I wrote the book, The Final Crash, because of my connections with the Conservative Party in the UK, I gave the book to George Osborne and the future Prime Minister David Cameron, and they wrote back saying, I hope it doesn't happen. which really summarizes just how frustrating it is. So nowadays, when I describe what is going on under the surface and in reality, I just get called a conspiracy theorist or a lunatic, because when you describe what sociopaths are doing, it's you who sounds like the madman, unfortunately.
Yes. So what is the current ideology that really drives the policy? I mean, we have certain specific things that stick out. There is a new ideology, the new leaders, the new politicians are thinking differently.
That's correct. At the moment, the big emphasis is on trying to demonize President Trump and a lot of the attacks on him about tariffs and the like. What he's doing is really, he's like a broom trying to sweep away the old order, because what we have at the moment is a whole host of organizations, so non-government organizations, who are trying to bypass democracy and add greater control for the benefit of a very small number of people. So this idea that Trump is being terrible, it actually goes back to his ideology, which is to make a better country for the majority of Americans. Because at the moment, the top 1% of Americans own half the stock market, directly and indirectly, and the bottom half of Americans own 1% of the stock market. So this financialization of the economy is what he's trying to reverse, and it's very hard to do, and it's very unpopular. But what we've seen for the last few decades is what we call the hourglass effect, where if you imagine an hourglass, you've had the middle class squeezed down to the bottom, and the money's gone up to the top. And so in an attempt to reverse this process, he's like cutting government costs, trying to increase income through tariffs, and reduce these huge deficits, which have not really seen since the Second World War. So that there is method to what he's doing, but he's being accused of being nostalgic, of trying to go back to the 60s, for example.
Even the 30s, yes.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, we are seeing an effort to do something with Russia, and as a result, we're seeing various groups mushrooming up around the world. We're seeing the BRICS and other consortiums getting together because they can see that there's going to be trouble with USA policies.
That's right.
To their detriment.
Yeah, and what's happening is that Russia has become, they've become demonized, because when you're trying to get what you want, you've got to create an enemy, like a bogeyman. And so you create a narrative that is against the people who oppose your views. And Russians are very traditionalist and against this kind of woke agenda. So they are our top target in the world. So what Biden did was that he cut off the Russian access to the SWIFT payment system to try and isolate Russia and also impose sanctions. And as you mentioned, the BRICS, all this has done is it's pushed trade away from America and the dollar. So the Chinese, Russians, and these developing countries are now trading among themselves and bypassing the US currency, which is it's a big threat to America.
Yes, and for some reason, raw materials and minerals have become very important. Are we preparing for war? And it looks like
very much so. And all you need to do is look at the stock market to understand what's happening. And you see in Europe, the defence stocks have absolutely shot up.
Yes.
Because the European Union and other countries have their bogeyman in the form of Russia. So they're going to remove any restraint financially and go for an arms race. And as someone who's a closet historian, I hate looking back at history because it keeps repeating and again and again. So we have an arms race in place, or desperately trying to build up defences and military positions and spending. And this always ends in one way: it ends in war. And what we haven't learned is what Napoleon did 200 years ago, what Germany tried to do 85 years ago. You take on Russia, you're not going to win. And there's kind of also a financial agenda, because as we've seen from confiscation of Russian assets, this is now like a power grab to take over Russian resources. As you say, commodities and raw materials are the new new gold, if that's not an irony. And so if they take out Russia, you can get their resources and get their assets, and this is the ultimate goal. But in the meantime, we have all propaganda saying, how righteous we are and how evil Russia are, and without any reference to the history of Ukraine going back 80 years, let alone 10 years.
Do you think the European Union is preparing for an arms race? I mean, do they see themselves now that they are forced to do that?
I think so. I think if you look at President Macron, he is what I call he's got a Napoleon complex. And for often what leaders want to do is want to have their name down in history. And Tony Blair was a classic one in the UK, going into Iraq with Bush in a completely unjustified manner based on lies. And we're seeing a similar thing again where great big egos love to be military leaders, or think they are, and they don't care about the public or what happens to the casualties. It's just for them. It's a power trip.
And the financial implications of what is happening. Are we going to see a change in the role of the banking system? We're talking about gradually introducing the central bank digital currencies. Are we going to see elimination of cash? Which banks are they going to be able to survive? Is the idea, the politicians, the government, to have control of all the money in circulation so that they can do a monetary policy as they like, which could involve negative interest rates instead of positive interest rates? It could involve penalties if the citizens do not comply with certain things that the politicians want. Are we moving towards this type of society that all this is temporary? Because what is the objective? You see, the path to tyranny is, as a number of people said, it looks reasonable once you know what the objective is. So you have the objective, but what is your opinion? Are you optimistic, or are you going to be a freer man, or not so free anymore?
At the moment, it's looking quite pessimistic. I mean, there's a phrase that when you know the destination, you understand the journey.
Yes.
And at the moment, all these changes that are going on financially, it's like looking at imagine looking at a salami. You never see the whole length or picture. All you get is one slice at a time of what's going on. So to answer the first question about elimination of cash, this is pretty much already happening. So in Spain, you have to have 24 hours advance permission to withdraw more than 3,000 euros, for example. And also the European Union now setting up a financial register. And the idea is there's going to be a wealth tax, and also going to have an exit tax. So whatever you do physically or financially, there's no escape from the system. It's a financial grab, if you like. And so all these things are a part of a chain of events or process. So I think banks will survive, even if central banks like the Bank of England have their own digital currency. But there'll be a kind of almost like a tax collection system where they'll be given some rights or create an oligopoly, and in return they do as the master bids. So freedom really comes down to control of travel and control of money and how you spend it. And what this digital process is doing, it's eroding our rights very steadily and slowly. So you're right, the path is going a bad way, but the more people know about it, the more pushback there will be. And hopefully, and these institutions are trying to bypass democracy, but hopefully we'll be able to push back and elect the right people who disagree with this, like President Trump.
Yes, of course, 200 years ago, Rothschild, the famous family of bankers, they did say, give me the creation and control of money, and you create as many cores as possible. Do people know how money is created nowadays? Do politicians know how money is created? We had the case of COVID, where in both cases, because the factories closed down and the shops closed down, the Prime Minister and the President, Prime Minister of the UK, President of USA, instructed their central bank to print money and put into the bank accounts of people. Creation of money. Quantitative easing in trillions, in many types. In the old days, it used to be called helicopter money. Trillions of quantitative easing. No inflation before COVID because the economy was thirsty. But if you don't enter the quantitative easing into productive resources, it creates inflation. But if you do, then it doesn't create inflation. So, creation of money. How is money created nowadays? Is there a difference between Europe and the USA and the UK and Japan? Or are they all doing the same policies? Is it a political decision how much money to put into the economy? It is. It's also a political decision whom to tax if you have put too much money.
Yeah, I mean, there's a theory that if the government created money but without interest, so debt-free money, then you wouldn't need a taxation system at all, and you could, as you say, direct money to productive areas rather than just pumping it into the money supply and creating inflation. So there's a control aspect to it. On the one hand, you've got banks creating money; they benefit because they can take a deposit of £1,000 and turn that into 10,000 of loans.
Yes.
So they're permanently growing and compounding their wealth. And on the other hand, you've got the government, the central banks and treasuries acting between themselves to create money by, the French call it légère de main, which means sleight of hand. So it's just a trick of getting more and more money creation. So really, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors around central banking and commercial banking, but ultimately the kind of end result of it all is devaluation of currency. And this is what we've seen for the last 100 years. You occasionally have a gold standard coming in and out. Usually they abandoned gold standards before world wars or in like the Great Depression. And during the Vietnam War, America dropped the last vestige of gold standard because that's really the last thing, like restraining aspect to stop too much money being created. So without that discipline, then money will steadily get weaker and more dilute, and hence, gold prices shooting up, Bitcoin shooting up, and this is just a reflection of how dilute money is and how little it purchases nowadays.
Yes. Now, USA it has a great debt, huge debt. A lot of people say, "My God, they are in trouble." But are they in trouble? They can print their own currency, and a large part of the borrowing is internal borrowing. It's not external. So experts, is there any expert that thinks that USA will really go bankrupt? I mean, all they have to do is print more money, and they don't care what happens to the rest of the world. They are looking for their own country. It's our currency, your problem. The old.
That's exactly what I was going to quote from the 1970s.
Yes.
It's just that, and they have that right because after the Second World War, they collected most of the world's gold, and their currency became by default a type of gold standard of money. So they became the reserve currency, allowing them to print what they want, and in effect, other countries were forced to reinvest back into the dollar, for example, like the Arab states with the oil money, and it became a permanent loop of money creation. So now Russia and China, the BRIC countries, have been kind of sidelined, and they're now worried about using the dollar. This automatic loop suddenly it's like standing on a hose pipe. You can't get the flow anymore. So the dollar is structurally going to be weaker. I think President Trump probably wants that for manufacturing, but the issue is that every time there's a build-up to war, each country does what's called a tit-for-tat devaluation, and it all escalates. Commodity prices go up, competition increases, tension, you name it. It all starts to kick off. But to answer the other question, in terms of America, the central bank could effectively cancel all the debt that it owns with its government. That's
yes.
possible.
Yes.
Also, President Trump is talking about in return for reducing tariffs, he will switch short-dated debt to long-dated debt, which is actually it's a form of default, but that's another option. So I think there's a lot of tricks left in the cupboard before anyone goes bankrupt.
Yes. Now, the crucial question for us in the Eurozone. You are in the UK, you have your own currency. We are in the European Union. We have the euro, which is supposed to be our own currency, which came as an effort to provide a common ground for payments, to make it easier. Of course, to do that, you need to have banks accepted in the interbank system. A number of banks are not accepted in the interbank system. So for a start, there is a problem. But now with the protectionist policies that the European Union will have to follow, who is going to protect whom? Each country will want to protect itself. Does that create a danger for the Eurozone, the currency? Because they cannot really protect themselves if they don't do monetary policy that they want. To do monetary policy, they have to have their own currency, not a European currency.
Yeah. If I can use another bit of Greek mythology and make reference to the Achilles heel of the European Union.
Yes.
The issue has always been that the debt markets were never combined. It's had separate currencies. Had a single currency but separate bond markets. So individual countries could see an explosion of high yields and falling prices. And this has always been the weakest link. And the kind of irony of what you first mentioned about the creation of the euro, I mean, the bigger European project was designed to reduce trade tension and currency tension by having this union. And Winston Churchill was a great fan with the European project originally. And the irony is that the European Union is now looking to fight a war when it was designed to stop wars, and it just makes me cry because fundamentally it is based on sound principles, but when it came to proper unification, which is via the bond market, this never happened. So this creates a lot of tension for the euro internally. I know it survived 2011 and the sovereign debt crisis then, but I think if a war is the ultimate option, then nothing's off the table for the currency. Who knows what will happen?
Yes, and of course, last but not least, a topic which is well within your grasp, Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies. Is the idea of creating the central bank digital euro for the politicians to have control, to eliminate this private section? Bitcoin is too big, but all the others are not so big. They can easily, if they want, they can eliminate Bitcoin by passing a law saying nobody accepts Bitcoin. End of the story. Like in 1971, when President Nixon said, you have 1 month to return your gold, otherwise you will be sued. It can be done in something similar.
Exactly.
Do you feel that, funnily enough, in 2008, we had the financial crash that you predicted. And soon after that, Bitcoin started being developed. The politicians allow it to develop. And now they have seen how far it has gone and how far it can go. So now they said, we have to stop this. Central bank digital currency, put everything under our control. Does that sound like a Cassandra prediction, or does that make some sense that the reason the central bank digital currencies are going to be formed is to get hold of the monetary policy of all there is and not allow Bitcoin and the like to exercise what they're doing now?
And I think it's spot on. I think the key word you used was control, because and we saw it when the truckers in Canada got debanked.
Yes.
I mean, it's if you can't spend money, you're a slave effectively. So there's two aspects to the control. The first one is taxation. So there may be taxes on even cash or like a wealth tax you mentioned before, and there's also by having a central bank digital currency, there's no escape from the system.
Yes.
At the moment, you have cash, gold, cryptocurrency, and the latter two have certainly been flying up because people need an escape from the banking system, but B, people want to get out of US Treasuries, which was the biggest, most liquid form of safe haven.
Yes.
So in the short term, I think the gold and cryptocurrencies will continue to do very well. However, as you say, all it takes is a law to say we're going to confiscate, like in the 1930s and 70s, we'll fine you if you don't. And I think that one aspect that could continue is that people could take precious metals in physical form and hide it. And likewise, you can take Bitcoin onto your telephone or storage, what's called cold storage, and keep it set somewhere safe. Because hopefully somewhere in the world there'll be an internet access. But again, the internet can get turned off, electric cars can get turned off. Yes. So it all comes back to control. And much as I love technology, there's two sides to it. There's an aspect of freedom, but there's an aspect of tyranny. And unfortunately, where governments are concerned, tyranny is always the first option.
Do you have a suggestion what politicians should do for the benefit of the people? Rather than continue on the path to tyranny, is there a beautiful system, financial system that will make everybody richer? And it's all down to politics, isn't it?
It is. I think if you go back to the 1960s, America had a very good level of equality. There's yes. Something called the Gini coefficient, yes. which measures the difference in wealth between the highest and lowest. And you found that back in the 60s, one parent could work and support a whole family, have a car and a house, and that's completely disappeared. So ultimately, if you had a central bank creating money for productive purposes and not just for commercial banks to grow bigger and earn interest. In fact, there's echoes of I've studied Islamic finance, bizarrely enough, because without interest, great things are possible. And here in Guernsey, we got out of a debt crisis by creating money that had no, it wasn't like a permanent cash like a note. It expired within a year, so it injected liquidity into the economy, but it didn't create inflation. So yes. There's lots of echoes from the past where a government that has the right philosophy can improve equality. And I think America's trying to go down that route. And at the moment, everyone, all these non-government organizations, banks, media, they're all against President Trump. I'm not saying he's a great guy, that I worship him or anything, but he's got the right idea. But things are a lot more complex, to make this happen. And I wish him luck. But other people like John F. Kennedy, he was very much in the same belief system of trying to improve wealth for all, and he ended up being assassinated. So there's just so many embedded conflicts of interests of extreme wealth and control that don't want the system to change. But meanwhile, most people are sort of, falling into relative poverty. So I think I'd love to have a blood-free revolution where we could change all this. But again, history it doesn't back me up on that one, I'm afraid.
Last question, Toby. One for the road. Mm-hmm. The fact that you have been learning Mandarin, does it betray your belief for the future? Do you see China being very soon even bigger than what it is now?
Yeah, so I think that it's part economic and part philosophical from my point of view. I went to Hong Kong 30 years ago and I sort of admired the work ethic of the Chinese so much. I just thought, the tide is going to turn, so the political power will move from west to east. Yes. And that's been going on gradually ever since. And the Chinese are well ahead in many areas. Their electric cars are really good. Their tech is fantastic. So it's all about protectionism. America's been trying to slow down this shift for a long time, and sanctions is part of the game as well. But on that note, I started learning Mandarin about 10 years ago. I'm not great, but I can hold a little conversation. But I do see that being where from the new financial centre and the biggest economy as well. They've got their fair share of problems. They still have communism at the core of their system, although it's a strange hybrid. But ultimately, whenever I hear government sort of pointing at someone like Russia or China saying, "Don't look at us, look at the enemy over there," I'm going, well, I'm always trying to just stand in other people's shoes and see what it's like from their point of view. So by learning Mandarin, I was able to communicate much better with Chinese people and understand how they saw the world, how their system sort of suits them, and really to get more empathy for what's going on, because every tyrant looks for an enemy, and I just want to, like in the Wizard of Oz, look behind the curtain and see, well, actually, what's really going on here with China. And I think there's all we see is the Western point of view, let's put it that way. So learning a language helps you to understand other people better.
Well, Toby, thank you very much for talking to us in the European Union from the United Kingdom. So it was great having you, very enlightening. Thank you very much, and hope to see you soon for further discussions.
Hopefully, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.